The alien military training station loomed large, a floating fortress of steel and light drifting in the cold vastness of space. Inside, recruits from dozens of species milled about, each preparing for their first day of rigorous combat training. Among the towering Kron-AK warriors with their scaled skin and the sleek Sicilians with their insect-like grace stood Daniel Carter, a human and the sole representative of Earth. He stood out not for his appearance, compact and unassuming compared to the other recruits, but for the dismissive sneers and whispered comments that followed him. "He won't last a day," one Kron-AK rumbled to another, his voice dripping with derision. "Humans are fragile creatures, barely capable of handling their own gravity." Daniel ignored the remarks, his expression calm, even as the disdain in the room pressed down on him like a weight. He was used to it. Humanity's entry into the Galactic Alliance was recent, and many of these species saw Earth as a primitive backwater. They couldn't comprehend why humans had been invited to participate in intergalactic military training. To them, Daniel was an anomaly, a mistake. Commander Zeldar, a towering being with glimmering, crystalline skin, stepped forward to address the recruits. His voice, amplified by the station's acoustics, commanded immediate attention. "You are here to prove your worth," he began, his sharp, angular eyes briefly sweeping over Daniel. "This program is designed to identify the strongest, the smartest, and the most adaptable. Some of you," his gaze lingered on Daniel, "may find yourselves outmatched." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Daniel remained unmoved. As the briefing continued, the recruits were sorted into teams. Daniel found himself paired with a Kron-AK named Vorak, a Zixilian named Shikra, and a multi-limbed, amphibious Ralithian named Kaler. None of them seemed thrilled about the arrangement. "Stay out of the way, human," Vorak growled, towering over Daniel. "We'll handle the real work." Daniel simply nodded, his expression unreadable. As they made their way to the training grounds, Daniel silently observed his teammates. The Kron-AK were strong, their scaled bodies built for brute force, but their movements lacked finesse. The Zixilians were fast and precise, but overly reliant on their advanced technology. The Ralithians had endurance and adaptability, yet they struggled with coordination. In contrast, Daniel relied on his instincts, honed by years of Earth's unpredictable environments and its history of conflict. He had studied alien combat styles before coming here, learning their strengths and weaknesses. And while the others underestimated him, he quietly analyzed their potential and their arrogance. As they prepared for their first exercise, Vorak sneered at Daniel one last time. "You'll see, human. This is no place for your kind." Daniel didn't respond. He simply adjusted his gear, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Let them think he was helpless. They would learn soon enough. The final exercise pushed them to their limits. The scenario was simple: defend a critical position against an overwhelming force. This time, the entire training station would simulate the enemy, a relentless tide of attackers from various species. The odds were stacked against them. Vorak was visibly uneasy now. His earlier confidence had waned, his earlier arrogance replaced with caution. "How do you expect us to hold this position?" he growled. "There's no way we can stop all of them." Daniel stood silently, his expression unreadable. "We don't need to stop them," he said calmly. "We just need to hold long enough for reinforcements to arrive." Shikra tapped her wrist device, pulling up a map of their surroundings. "They'll be coming from multiple directions. We need to spread out, fortify key positions, and maintain communication." Kaler, who had regained some composure after Daniel's previous success, nodded in agreement. "We'll use the terrain to our advantage. Make them come to us." The alien recruits were hesitant but followed Daniel's lead. They set traps, positioned makeshift barricades, and coordinated using makeshift signal systems. As the enemy forces began their assault, the battle began. At first, the aliens fought with brute force, charging into the defenses with no regard for strategy. Vorak was at the front, his plasma cannon blazing, but Daniel noticed gaps in his positioning. The Kron-AK's immense strength left him slow and vulnerable to flanking maneuvers. Daniel responded quickly, relaying to Kaler and Shikra to use unconventional tactics. The Ralithian used his flexible limbs to manipulate the landscape, shifting the enemy into tighter formations. Shikra coordinated a suppression tactic using makeshift energy barriers, while Daniel led a small squad on a flanking maneuver. For every enemy advance, Daniel had a counter. His ability to adapt and assess the situation in real time disrupted their approach. The other recruits began to notice how seamlessly he operated within the chaos, adjusting their strategies accordingly. Vork's frustration grew as more enemies breached their defenses, and yet Daniel continued to excel. The Kron AK began to see the gap in strength, not in raw power, but in how Daniel wielded tactics and strategy to maintain control. "What are you waiting for?" Vork snarled, locking eyes with Daniel. "You think you can hold them off alone?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't need to do it alone." He motioned for reinforcements to regroup. "We'll hold together." As the battle raged on, Daniel's methodical approach kept their defenses steady. Waves of enemies came, and with each one, Daniel found new weaknesses to exploit. Even the alien recruits began to look toward him for guidance rather than dismissing him as a liability. Finally, after what felt like hours of relentless combat, the simulated reinforcements arrived. The alien forces began to fall back, their numbers dwindling as Daniel's team held the line. The battlefield quieted, the final enemy forces retreating. Commander Zeldar's voice echoed through the comm system, acknowledging the team's success. "Remarkable," he said, his tone neutral, but hinting at surprise. "You've adapted far better than I anticipated." The recruits, including Vork, stood in stunned silence. Daniel, though tired, merely nodded. "Humanity's strength isn't in overwhelming force," he said softly. "It's in how we respond to what's thrown at us."